I think it's fair to say that most open source projects out there are just run by some guy. There's just someone out there writing the code. Doesn't matter if it's powering Netflix and Facebook and a bunch of other sites. Doesn't matter if it's powering most of the world's government. There's just some guy writing the code. And sometimes there's even more than one person doing the code. And when we start looking at large-scale projects, you very quickly start seeing the introduction of non-profits. Whether we're talking about Linux desktop projects like GNOME with the GNOME Foundation, KDE with the KDE EV, or all manner of other projects out there, if it is not a commercial project, it's pretty common to see a non-profit with those bigger projects. And the other day, I came across this post from Mitchell Hashimoto, the creator of the Ghosty Terminal, Advice for Tech Non-Profits. This is discussing what he feels are traps that tech non-profits often fall into. It isn't directly focused at Linux non-profits or any non-profit in particular, but I think what is being said here generally applies to most of them. In this blog post, I'll share what I've learned with my own activity with other causes, as well as what I've learned from spending more time with donors in general. This blog post will be biased towards larger donations, but I think many of these concepts translate nicely to smaller donations as well. I'm highlighting tech non-profits specifically because these are all concepts that I find other causes get right more often than not, whereas tech consistently gets them wrong. I also have a bias towards wanting technical organizations to become more successful. I would say that is a pretty good bias to have, and I feel the same way. I don't necessarily like all of the organizations in the Linux space or in the open source space, but I think most of them are doing good work, and I would like to see most of them doing better. They're not all doing badly, but doing better is generally a good thing. And from my personal experience talking to people, doing the podcast, things like that, I noticed there is a lot of tech people who really just want to focus on the tech, and any sort of advertising outside of their space or fundraising just falls entirely out of their interests. I see this with game devs, I see this with open source devs, and I'm sure it's a problem with devs in all manner of spaces as well. You really want to focus on the thing you're working on, and trying to do the people stuff, trying to do the social stuff, is just not your forte. But one thing often done wrong is, how do I donate? How am I supposed to give you money? Tech projects usually nail the metaphorical swipe a credit card donations to provide small one-time amounts and specific smaller tiers, X amount per month. They will do that assuming that you can find where the donate button is. And this is often a problem in Linux-focused projects where the donate page is just hidden somewhere on the website. Can you find it? Is there a direct link to it? Nobody knows. But a lot of donors don't work this way. I donate through a donor advised fund, a DAF. To donate, I need at a minimum the verifiable EIN of a tax-exempt organization. DAFs can only contribute to registered non-profits. On top of that, I usually need a physical address and the contact information for a real human that can work with the fund managers to process the donation. And this is just one of the many vehicles that people will use to donate to a non-profit. The best non-profits have a dedicated donate page that has an obvious and easily accessible list of donation methods: credit card, check, donor-advised funds, employer matching, stocks, legacy giving, will, trust, retirement accounts, etc. Each donation method leads to its own dedicated page with very specific information about how to donate via that method. Oftentimes, you will have a page with the main donation methods, the credit card, the PayPal, the things like that, and then you'll sometimes have like a link to alternative methods, and usually what you see is just a big wall of text explaining maybe how the other methods work, but most likely just the fact that they do exist and the bare minimum information you need to know to actually use it. But in a lot of cases, things are not super well explained, let alone the fact that it's quite common for a lot of these methods to just not be supported whatsoever. Also very important, why should I donate? Attracting donors is not so different from attracting customers. You have to engage in some level of marketing. For non-profits, the question is, why should I donate? Technical people tend to be bad at this for their own technical projects, so it's not surprising to me that technical people are also often bad at this for their non-profits they're involved in. I've spoken to a lot of technical people on the podcast, and I have met people who are incredibly knowledgeable about the area they are working in, and if you are on that hyper niche topic, or specifically even more so, working on the code base, looking at the code they are producing, looking at the issues they are reviewing, all of this good stuff directly involved in the project, they are doing amazing work. Then you try to get them to explain it in a way that people outside of that space understand. Try to explain it in a way that's going to get other people involved. And even though they know all of this stuff about it, they completely fall apart and have no idea how to explain it to anyone else. Finding someone who's both really knowledgeable about a topic and also able to actually explain that to people not directly involved in the topic is a rare set of skills to see. An amazing example of a person who can do this is Nate Graham from the KDE project. I've spoken to Nate a bunch of times. He knows a lot about KDE, but he is also really good at explaining it. I think part of that is the fact that he's used to doing blog posts and used to talking to people. It's a skill he's trained over time. But a lot of people are just very hyper-focused on the work they are doing, and the soft people skills outside of that, at least outside of the ones they need to directly work on the project, are kind of lacking. I too used to have the attitude of the value is obvious, or perhaps the idea that if you build it, they will come. This is true for a small segment of the market, but for the much larger segment, you have to educate. If we're talking about some hyper niche, where the only people involved in that niche know about every piece of software in that niche, yeah, it's pretty easy to get them involved and understand why they might want to donate to the project, but if you're one of 30 different projects out there, what makes your project special? What are you doing that provides value? And just the fact that you are using that software is not a good enough justification to explain why someone should part with their own money. Aim to answer the following questions. What do you do? So what is the actual thing? Why is what you do important? Who is benefiting from what you do? Why do you need money to do what you do? And yes, paying rent is obviously, a direct thing, but what is the money actually going to do in the project? If you can pay your rent and don't have to work a second job, what can you actually do in the project to improve things that affect the user? What have you done recently? This is a very big one. What is the money directly affecting? How has money enabled you to do what you did recently? How much money do you need to do what you do? So if you have a project that is bringing in, let's say, $5,000 a month, and you don't have any employees, do you need more money? Is that going to affect anything in the project? You're already paying your bills, so why would anybody else want to give money to this project? Why do you need that much? Is it going up or is it going down, and why? How are you spending your money? Who else is donating, and why aren't more people donating? What are you doing wrong that is not encouraging more people to fund the project? A lot of these questions, especially the financial ones, can be answered by reading an IRS Form 990, but giving a more human-friendly version of that information is always helpful. If somebody is going and reading your IRS forms, they are probably already invested enough into the nonprofit to already be donating to it. Most people are just simply not going to do that. Technical projects often don't answer any of this. They either consider their value obvious, or simply point to the projects they build and expecting the viewer to gather enough information based on that. You use it. Why do you not donate to the project? Do you not see the value it provides you? But that isn't enough. I'm a technical person. I can look at a project and understand its technical value. I can conclude, yes, this is a cool thing that I'd like to continue to exist, but that doesn't answer the very basic questions of how much and why. Beyond that, there's so many more questions I've listed as above. If you want to attract more donations and appeal to a broader donor base, you must answer these very basic questions. One of those questions: what is my donation doing? If you have X amount of donations, what can you do with it? If you have more, what is that going to do? If you have less, what is that going to do? What sort of effect is the money actually having? And this is somewhere I often see Linux organizations completely fail. Maybe you'll get a graph and some sort of basic explanation, but not one where it actually moves you to donate. I've only seen a couple of technical nonprofits produce an impact report, and of those, they were extremely amateur compared to the average non-technical nonprofit. Most don't produce an impact report at all, which is a terrible mistake. An impact report is a human-friendly annual report of what the organization achieved and its goals for subsequent years. It usually includes a report of the financial health of the organization as well. This is a very big one. This is so important, and look, I've talked about this issue a number of times on this channel, and for certain organizations, you'll see the problem just kind of ignored until it gets so bad that everybody knows about it, even if they're not talking about it. And I'm sure these discussions are happening in private calls and conferences, but the donor who is giving money to the project should know that, you know, the money is actually going to go to doing something, and the organization is still going to be around without a lot more people adding money into the pile as well. First, a donor generally doesn't want to be a part of a small group of donors. I specifically care that the organization will have a healthy group of donors so that I am just a piece. Fundraising goals and marketing is a part of that. I'll donate more if I know more people are donating. You want to feel like you are part of an organization that is going to make progress. If you're the only person donating, your money isn't necessarily going to make some major change unless you give a lot of money, but then it kind of feels like you're giving more than you're really getting, depending on the project, but in a lot of cases, that's how it's going to feel. Second, the larger the fundraised amount, either individually or in aggregate, the more I want to see results, mainly so that the money isn't being wasted. I think most nonprofits aren't trying to waste money, but the goal of a nonprofit is to achieve some public good, and it's easy to inefficiently allocate funds. Nonprofits especially can't afford to be inefficient at allocating funds, but too many are. To that end, impact reports should also contain measurable goals. A goal that you can see if the project has actually achieved, and in subsequent reports should contain reflections on those goals. Did they get hit? Did they not get hit? If they didn't get hit, why did that happen? One thing I really try to look for is where a goal was missed and how that organization reacted. As with other things, how one deals with failure often speaks more loudly than how one deals with success. And the unreasonable effectiveness of human connection. You can discover information, align goals, resolve arguments. The unreasonable effectiveness of human connection. You can discover information, align goals, resolve arguments, and more so much more quickly and easily by talking to someone face to face. Technical nonprofits tend to lack a meaningful amount of face-to-face communication. They tend to lean too hard on asynchronous textual mediums such as IRC, Matrix, or email. And all of these are useful, all of these are good, but they shouldn't be your only option. They shouldn't be the only way to interact with the nonprofit, to interact with somebody involved. It's the uncomfortable truth that a lot of people don't like to process. Nonprofit organizations are sales-driven organizations. You have to engage in a lot of the standard tactics a business has to in order to attract and retain donors in order to pursue your mission statement, which for a nonprofit is by definition a public good, which usually is a good thing. My advice for technical organizations is to make it easy to get in touch with a real human via phone. Yes, a phone, or at worst, a video call. I disagree that a video call is worse than a phone here. This seems like weird phrasing. I think a video call is considerably better. If the donor doesn't want to turn their camera on, that's totally fine. But being able to see the person you are talking to, I think makes the experience considerably better. And not just that, I think there is a lot of value in not just putting out textual-based reports, but going and doing shows, going and doing podcasts, talking to people, letting people know that there are actually humans involved in this organization, and doesn't even have to be like somebody else's thing. You can just produce your own video content and let people know that this is actually a human endeavor. This is actually a thing where people are involved in, and you can see who these people are. This is also a retention strategy. Schedule meetings with your existing large donors if you're in town or they're particularly heavy donors. Try to schedule dinners. If you're going to be at the same conference, schedule a lunch or drinks. Use this time to remind them of the mission, the recent achievements, and how much they're helping. Honestly, become friends. I genuinely mean this. For for-profit organizations, it can be a lot more transactional. For non-profits that are mission-driven, these are usually people that are highly philosophically aligned, and it's likely you'll get along at a personal level. Become friends, it makes the whole thing a lot more fun for both parties. A for-profit is a machine that takes money and returns more money to the investors. A non-profit is a machine that takes money and returns social impact to the donors. They're very different, and yet uncomfortably alike. I believe some people tend to believe a non-profit organically gets donations from little-known sources, the larger group of do-gooders. But most successful non-profits I've worked with, even the smaller ones, that also do the best work, have people aggressively working on the business of donations. This should be unsurprising, since the ability of most non-profits in the early stage is directly correlated to the funding they get. I want to see new and existing technical non-profits be successful. I think the vast ecosystem of existing technical non-profits are leaving a ton on the table by being, quite frankly, terrible at attracting and retaining donors. I hope this blog post helps illuminate the work involved and paints a roadmap of how non-profits can improve. So let me know, do you donate to any non-profits in the tech world, in the Linux world, or even just non-technical profits? And what is it that gets you to actually give money to one of these organizations? What is it that attracts you to it and keeps you coming back? Is it just what they are doing with things you can directly see, or does some of the outreach actually encourage you to do so? I would love to know. So if you liked the video, go like the video, go subscribe as well. And if you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to the Libera Pay, link in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and money.
Something like this.